this whole issue with money. Now, there's been a couple of things that have been out in the last couple of days. There's just nothing new, but these are really poignant marks to just expose really the motivation behind why so many people don't want to do anything at all with peace and want to go full on with this war support. One of them I'm going to look at first is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who entered Congress, frankly, is kind of a firebrand, and a lot of people just consider her a joke or whatever. But dude, she is turning into one of the really sober voices on restraint and on things that make sense and are logical with foreign policy. And she calls something out here, which I think you'll agree with.
Many of the members that I serve with that are highly funded by the military industrial complex, they're going to make sure that those government contracts and all of that gets funded. They believe in a war economy, and they will flat out tell us that they'll say, Marjorie, you have thousands of jobs in your district that rely on these government contracts. Well, you want to know something? I'm not very interested in funding an economy that's based on killing people, especially innocent people and children.
What a crazy idea. I'm not interested in an economy that based on killing people. What do you say?
Oh, no, absolutely. Edwin Starr, if back when you and I were teenagers, had a song out called War. What is it good for? And he had the lyrics wrong because he said absolutely nothing. No. Edwin, you're very mistaken. It's worth a lot. It's worth a lot of money. Someone just recently resurfaced a video of Vladimir Putin meeting with George W. Bush back in the Slovenia summit. I believe it was in 2001. And at that summit, Putin declassified. He read a declassified Soviet intelligence in which it described the efforts. I believe Stalin was still in power. Maybe it's the first year of Khrushchev, 1954. That the Soviet Union asked to become part of NATO in 1954. That instead of having to spend all that money in the Cold War to fight the Soviet threat, here was the Soviets said, "Hey, can we join NATO? It'll help us cool off all of this security spending." And the West's reply was, you can't say it in polite company, but it was basically, "Go pound sand. We're not interested." And then Putin, and when he read that, George W. Bush, like an idiot, like a jackass, goes, "Ha, ha, 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 ha. What's so goddamn funny about that, George? Here we had a chance to have peace with the Soviet Union, and the West rejected it, and you think that's a joke?" And then Putin, in the same conversation, says, "Look, I asked Bill Clinton, and Madeleine Albright told us no." And what does Bush do again? God, it's, the fact that he was president now is just, I find a continual embarrassment. Because again, right there, instead of sensing the moment and the opportunity, hey, we don't have to arm ourselves to the teeth because Russia wants to be a partner with us. But no, we can't do that, because if we do that, the shareholders of Lockheed Martin, of General Dynamics, of Boeing, of Raytheon, and the hundreds of Beltway bandit contractors out there, they'd be out of a job, and our economy would be in trouble. And we can't make our economy grow without it being based on killing foreigners. So sorry, we're going to keep this thing in play. That's what's going on.
Wow, I see that Gary, being his magical self that he is, found that video that you were just talking about there. Gary, does that have any audio with it?
Oh, yeah.
Proposed, we're talking about the widening of the NATO pact and what they're going to do about bringing Soviet Union. There is no need to stress the completely unrealistic nature of such a proposal from the Soviet Union. That's the answer that NATO gave. So what we're talking about here, you remember about a year ago, I think somebody asked a question about what's your attitude, is it possible that Russia is going to join in NATO or not? I said, why not? And right away, Mrs. Albright, former Secretary of State, she was someplace on a trip to Europe, she said, look, we're not talking about this right now. Look, you understand that Our attitude toward NATO is not was one towards an enemy organization. Of course not. And I'm very grateful to the President of the United States that finally, from the territory of the United States, these words were heard. This is very important for us. We value this. When a president of a great power says that he wants to see Russia as a partner and maybe even as an ally, this is worth so much to us.
Wow, that's really good there. We can cut that off.
Just
Just imagine that back then, if it was acted upon, how many people would be alive today?
Yeah.
And
it would have been
well done, Gary. By the way, that's fabulous.
It would have been a game changer completely. And Gary didn't happen to catch the clips of Bush laughing, but I've got it posted at Sonar 21. I mean, the laughter was so inappropriate. Again, because Putin, remember back then he came to power in 1999, in August of 1999. And so at that point, he's like 47 or no, 37 years old. Is that right? 52? No, 47. So he's a young guy. He's not a very experienced guy. And so he's been learning, but he knew what the Russian position was. And time again, the Russians were betrayed by the West and provoked with this effort to expand NATO. And for what reason? Russia was not building up its military. Russia was not issuing papers threatening. They never had the equivalent of Rand Corporation in Russia write the paper in 2019 called "Extending Russia," and the entire paper is about what can we do to Russia to screw it over, to weaken it, to stress it out, so that we can basically defeat it. What can we do? How much more aggressive do you need to be in making threats to another country than that? And that's what the West has been doing. And we got this constant barrage of propaganda from all the mainstream media, from most of the politicians. Thankfully, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a welcome example, Thomas Massey, but 2 out of 537, 538, we got an overwhelming number of dummies.
Well, and there's one more to add to the positive list, and that's Tucker Carlson, who was he and Mark Cuban were on the All In podcast a few days back, and this subject came up about funding the war in Ukraine. And watch this interesting exchange between Tucker and Mark Cuban.
What's your take on whether we should be sending money to Ukraine or not? Were you in favor of that?
Man, they need it.
I mean, honestly, I don't have a good answer. I can make an argument both ways, and half my family is Ukrainian from my grandparents. And so, personally, I think we should help, but I don't have a studied answer for you.
How much money have you sent to Ukraine?
None.
Oh, so what do you mean by we? You're the one whose family's from Ukraine. Like, why don't you send them $1 billion?
Because I'm trying to fix healthcare.
Why don't you fix their healthcare if you're like so deep? If you think we need to help, why don't you start? How about you first? Yeah. I notice that's never like even an option for anybody. It's like, we need to help. That's not what charity is. Forcing other people to help is not charity.
Here's the good
vanity.
News.
Yeah,
that's wow.
Yeah,
That's quite a little statement there.
Yeah, well, Tucker's become increasingly fed up with this bureaucratic state that dominates Washington and controls the foreign policy. It's still calling the shots. The assassinations that the Israelis carried out under Biden are still being done under Trump. So it's not Trump who's directing that this be done. So like this attack on the Hamas officials, that wasn't at Trump's direction. That's coming from within deep state intelligence. When you look at across the globe, the number of color revolution operations that are underway, CIA is out of control. It needs to be put back into its lane, but unfortunately, it's captive as well. Ratcliffe, he's just another creature of AIPAC, in my view. So you don't have anybody. Tulsi, God bless her, she doesn't have a lot of clout when it comes to particularly in interfering in covert operations. She on paper is supposed to have the ability to sign off on them, but a lot of times these things are very well advanced. And I mentioned before, it's like we continue to muck around in the Caucasus, in Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and it's no coincidence that you've got a 400-person embassy in Yerevan, and I mean in Armenia, which is that works out to like 14.3 embassy officials to every one for 1,000 Armenians. It's an extraordinarily large presence, and I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that a significant number of those are CIA and NGO personnel there to carry out activities both in Russia and in Iran.
Well,
So-
you say that the CIA needs to be brought back into its lane, but who could do that? I mean, you saw when, I mean, if I can just go there, you see the JFK seemed to want to get them in a lane, and how that turned out.
Yeah.
Is it even possible?
In theory, it's possible, but it's going to, I think what it's going to take is going to take some incredible disaster where the CIA will more of a failure than what we saw with 9/11. And I know there are those who say, hey, the CIA carried out 9/11. I won't, don't want to get into that. But the time's got to come that the CIA, in my view, it needs to be defunded. It needs to be dismantled, and we need to start over. Yeah. We need a good intelligence capability, but that mean what we mean by that intelligence is not collecting information so we can figure out how better to attack other people, but rather collect information that will let us know if we are in fact facing some potential threats that could endanger America. But we always our method is we keep insisting that there are those threats. It's China, it's Russia, it's Iran, it's Yemen, but
It's Venezuela. It's North Korea. Add them to the list.
Yeah, but we never take responsibility for saying what is it that we are doing to ourselves and doing to our country that's creating these vulnerabilities.
Yeah,
and why is it that we have to always start from the premise so and so is an enemy? Like that Rand Corporation report was written from the standpoint that Russia's an enemy, an adversary that we got to be able to defeat or weaken, as opposed to say, why do I need to view you as an enemy or an adversary? Why can't I view you as a potential friend and try to develop a relationship? And then if it turns out that there's something perverse or twisted about you or evil, then I can decide, okay, I've got to, this is somebody I can't deal with. We'll go from there. But instead, our entire posture is one of the other people are enemies and we got to beat them.
Yeah, and of course that all circles back again to the money, because there's always money and power behind having all these enemies, and we think we control it all. And I just fear one day, Larry, that we're going to get that crash that you just mentioned that is necessary before we can reform, because we're going to stumble our way in it through sheer arrogance and just building up so many different enemies and opponents that should never have been. But like you said, we're going to make it that way.
When did you first move to the Washington, D.C. area?
The first time I moved here was basically 2002.
Okay. So I'm older than you, shocker. And I was there in 1979. So in 1979, when you drove around Northern Virginia and then over into Montgomery County, Maryland, and down to Alexandria, you didn't see any Lamborghini, Jaguar, Ferrari, Bentley, Rolls-Royce dealerships. None of those existed. Are you kidding? This is Washington, D.C. Those exist now. That city is awash in money. And you saw where Trump went to eat last night. Went out for dinner 2 blocks from the White House, or 3 blocks, at Joe's Steak and Crab House and seafood. Now, Joe's is a famous place down in Miami. But man, this is an upscale restaurant, to say the least.
Yeah,
and it's all emblematic of the money that is flooded into Washington out of the pockets of taxpayers all across the United States to fund contractors and to fund foreign wars. While the cities go to hell, while our literacy rates fall into 79%, and it's just America's in trouble. But instead of trying to solve our own problems domestically, we keep looking for foreigners to blame it on.
Yeah, that's not going to work long term. But anyway, listen, I really appreciate you coming on today. I know your time's running short. You got to run off here, but really appreciate you bringing such clarity on some of these issues that really are kind of mucked up when you look at it through a lot of the limited mainstream press. And we're always appreciative of you coming on.
Hey, thanks for giving me a platform. Don't chase me off with the pitchforks and the torches.
No. Well, we'll give you a flashlight instead of that. But also just remind people that if you don't get enough of Larry on our show here, you can go to sonar21.com where you can read that article we were talking about in its entirety, and you can see a bunch of other stuff he said. Plus, we are on podcast. Be sure and let your friends know who may like to get their information via podcast. You saw those. Just type in Daniel Davis Deep Dive and they'll find us waiting there, or danieldavisdeepdive.substack.com if they prefer it in the written format. We've got both for you. There's Larry right there. He's on our commercial. So anyway, we are always going to be unintimidated and uncompromising. We're going to bring you the truth no matter what it is, because you deserve to know that. Then you can make up your own mind about how you see the world. Thanks very much for being with us, folks, and we'll see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.